The clash between the Conservative members of the Tory party and Rishi Sunak's government continues as Priti Patel is now telling the Prime Minister to stop being a socialist. Hello everybody, welcome to the channel that challenges the mainstream media and the political establishment, from the left-wing nutters to the globalist elite. We have a lot to talk about today on the channel. If you're new to the channel, we come to you guys every half an hour with all the news updates that's going on around the country. But first things first, we're going to talk about something that's a bit of a cliche. The Tory party, Tory MPs and ministers. It's always been the same when they are backbenchers. They become very rebellious and right-wing, and the moment they become government ministers, they become sellouts. It's just a part of the system. That's just how the game works. Perfect example is Priti Patel. Yeah, let's talk about Priti Patel, because as Home Secretary, she wasn't really the best, was she? She said all the right things, but not only she didn't really act on them properly, but she was also part of the same government, primarily Boris Johnson's government, that did a lot of, let's just say, liberalism. And she seemed fine with it at the time. She's now coming out, she's more independent-minded now, so she's attacking Rishi Sunak's government, rightly so, but again, a bit of hypocrisy here can be pointed out. Firstly, let's go to Priti Patel, because she was on GB News and she talked about net zero as a program, and she was saying it's time to stop the whole thing, to pause the whole thing, review, because it's affecting a lot of people up and down the country. Now, there's already a bit of a U-turn from the government, because they know that the election's coming up, so they don't want to be seen as completely lovers of net zero, even though they're still doing it. But let's go to Priti first.
So, well, first of all, my views on this are that actually we need to pause all this activity. 2030 is not that far away. In a, click of fingers, 2050 will be upon us. Yeah. The public are not ready for this. And importantly, we cannot just have the state, the government, central government, just sort of saying across, again, institutions, local councils, county councils, these are the targets that you have to meet, when we don't have the technology. We're not ready. Now, if we want a sensible conversation about climate and the impact of climate change, recognising there are problems is one thing, absolutely, but making sure that we have the tools and the ability that doesn't impose costs and taxes on ordinary people. This is a space that we have to be in. Are you worried? And we're not in that space at all.
Again, she's saying all the right things. But when they're in power themselves, the whole thing changes. I can assure you, if somehow Rishi Sunak decides to stay as a member of parliament after leaving Downing Street, he's going to stand on the backbenches. He's going to make right-wing speeches saying we should cut taxes, we shouldn't go full on net zero. He's going to do the exact same thing. But she's saying the right things, right? We've already talked about the cost of net zero. You can see there are different areas, from agriculture, infrastructure, to manufacturing, aviation, and buildings, especially when it comes to the electric vehicles and buildings and all these areas. It's been going up, and there's a massive gap to be filled by using common sense policies, but it's not really happening. Now, we have some good news today, some good announcements from the government, because they've been forced to do it, especially on oil and gas and on various U-turns on net zero. So I do welcome them, but let's not pretend that they are suddenly conservative. They are just doing it because the election's coming up. Anyway, we have also Lord Callanan, who's the parliamentary under secretary for energy efficiency and green finance. Yeah, he was speaking to the Times Radio, said that government ministers were still committed to the green agenda. We are still committed to net zero by 2050, not 30, 2050. He said, all we are saying is that we have to do it in a way that's fair and proportionate, and that takes people along with us. Okay, cool. He also says we don't want some sort of religious crusade. You say that, but the whole concept as a principle of net zero is very aggressive, it's very black and white, and you can't really slow it down. You either stop it or you keep going. You can't really do wishy-washy, otherwise it's going to be semi-net zero. So you have to make up your own mind. Are you going to go with the global consensus of all the other countries who signed up for the same mental idea of doing this aggressive deadline, or you can go on your own? Just like Sweden. The Swedish government are making changes now when it comes to their programs and their policies, because they realize they don't have to follow the whole of the world when it comes to these sort of things. Each country is different. Each demographic is different. Location is different. The economies are different. You can still be in favor of clean air and clean water, But you don't have to go and destroy people's lives for it. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, we know that the main agenda is because of the green lobby money behind it. And it's a great cash cow scheme for the government, taxation, and of course, it will help them control our lives. Now, we're going to keep you guys posted on this because the next video in half an hour, we're going to be talking about Rishi Sunak's approval of new oil and gas contracts and licenses. So that's good to hear. He's finally been forced to do that. But there's also a bit of a big but around it, as usual. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.